Welcome to the fifth and the last of the ISAC short class series, How to Become an Art Historian. We have seen in the previous videos that an important step toward becoming an art historian, and that can be certainly applied to any scientific discipline, is to get awareness of, and if needed, to detach oneself from the narratives elaborated through years, centuries, even millennia on the very same images we are working on. We have seen how there were narratives within the practice of ancient art history, surrounding the images from the classical and ancient North African and West Asian world, that can bias the way, as art historians, we perceive and talk about those images. In today's video, we are going to switch our perspective from outside narrative to inside narrative and see how an image can have a story to tell. I do think that the question of the inside narrative is an important one for art historians. As a teacher, I am regularly confronted with students using formulations such as, the image says that, the image sends the message. And I have myself used such kind of sentences. I am now avoiding this phraseology, and I am asking my students to do the same. Indeed, I think it conveys the not quite right idea of one articulated discourse enunciated by the image itself, and obscures the complexity of the narrative phenomenon within an image. I think that an image never has its own agency, and that we should always be careful to link the process of enunciation and perception to a mosaic of agents with diverse relationships. For example, the enunciation process at play in a given image is carried out both by the one who orders and the one who manufactures, and specifically for ancient images, they can be two different agents. So, when doing art history, the inside narratives of an image should always be questioned, but in keeping in mind the web of operators participating in those narratives. That being said, on today's video, we are going to focus on just one specific narrative, which is the man non-human antagonism in late antique Iranian images, and see what steps can we take to untangle a narrative in art history. The core of today's study is the corpus of the Sasanian silver dishes with a royal figure hunting. They form a coherent corpus of shared medium and iconography, as well as, even if we really don't know much about it, production. In the current state of our knowledge, it is thought that those dishes were manufactured for the royal power, maybe in royal workshop, and were used as part of diplomatic exchanges at an inner scale of the Sasanian Empire. What I am going to present in today's video is part of an ongoing research project on those plates. Before diving into untangling the narratives of the Sasanian dishes, If you want to have a little bit more information about the Sasanian period, I encourage you to check out the first and the fourth video of this series, as well as the list of references for this video on the ISAC website. Before starting, there is another point I would like to clarify. I will use, in the course of that video, the term non-human, referring to non-human animals. For what I can say, the distinction between humans and animals as two completely different groups was quite clear for the late antique Iranian society. So, using the non-human category could be viewed, on my part, as a projection of modern categories. I am using the non-human term in that very specific context of studying the antagonism with man, because it contains a semantic dimension of alterity, which is at play in the antagonism we are talking about. And also because, as we are going to see it, in that specific iconographic context, there is a form of blur with certain animals being more human than it appears first. The first step toward untangling a narrative as an art historian is to question the context of apparition. Where is the antagonistic representation of man and non-human figured? To answer that question, it shall be checked where each of the opponents appear. The masculine figure, when non-royal, appears mainly in bust portraits on seals and in court or genre scenes in silverware. When royal, the masculine figure appears in portrait on seals and coins, in silverware in court and antique scenes, and in the rock reliefs in investiture scene, equestrian combat, court scenes, and for few occurrences in antique scene. The non-human figure is a very important element of Sasanian iconography. They can be found in all types of media: relief, stuccos, silverware, weaponry, textiles, seals, and coins. A characteristic feature of Sasanian iconography is the appearance of the non-human figure alone, often with minimal narrative context. Particularly in seals, coins, and textiles, non-humans are depicted in isolation, in a drawn medallion, or in a medallion formed by the medium itself. This iconographic form is not found on reliefs, and very little on silverware. Finally, there are very few representations of interaction between humans and non-humans in late antique Iranian images. When these kind of representations occur, it is chiefly on silver dishes and as an antagonistic representation. So the representation of antagonism with the non-human is, in the late antique Iranian images, largely privileged for the masculine and royal figure, and largely privileged on silver dishes. It should be noted here that when non-humans appear with feminine figure, The relationships depicted is of commensality without violence. The second step toward entangling a narrative as an art historian is to question how concretely this antagonism narrative is constructed. The first formal analysis that should be done here is to define how the adversaries are portrayed. The non-humans fall into three categories that are not mutually exclusive. Either they are big or known to be dangerous, like the lion, the panthera, the stag, the bear, the boar, or they are smaller, less dangerous for humans, like the ibex or the gazelles. When the non-humans belong to the first and second categories, big and dangerous, in the images of antagonism, there are usually two of them, which is understood as a double representation of the same animal when hunted and when dead. When non-humans belong to the third category, small, there are usually more than two of them. In certain cases, a narrative of power and dangerousness is built for the non-humans. Let's take a closer look at this silver plate depicting ibexes. We can recognize both male and female ibexes. The male having those long curved horns, with the female having short, straight horns. In the wild, male ibex and female ibex live in separate groups, except during the rooting season from late November to mid-January. This is a time when male ibexes may fight each other to show their superiority to female ibexes, and can be then more aggressive even towards humans. I think that in this dish, the representation of a male and female ibexes creates a narrative of antagonism in which one of the opposing parties, the male animal, is particularly aggressive. So the narrative elaborates in the Sasanian hunting scenes is that the king has to fight prodigious adversaries, prodigious by being big or dangerous or multiple. Let's go a little deeper into the formal analysis of the non-humans to see if another level of narrative can be entangled here. Let's have a closer look at this silver dish displaying a king stabbing a panthera. The protagonists are depicted in very similar postures. The human in a forward lunge in a position of attack. The animal almost completely upright on its hind legs, its body forming an almost vertical line, showing that it's being pulled backward by the human force and completely controlled by it. The verticality of the animal body materializes the force exerted by the adversary, in this case the human, but also perhaps the verticality humanizes the animal body. In that older silver dish depicting a gazelle, the animal's bipedalism corresponds to a tilting position. The animal is depicted bipedally in a backward falling position, embodying a precise moment in time, the moment of leaning towards the animal's death, and thus towards the destruction of the opposing force. This bipedalism can also be the result of an attacking movement, a leap forward, halted by the counter-attack. It's probably not very realistic from the point of view of animal movement, but a little bit more so from the point of view of human movement. The animal's bipedalism is also forced here by the constraints of the support. The circular figurative field created by the shape of the plate, as well as the very small scale, since the sole figure of the king and his rider occupies almost the entire plate, leaves little room for the animal. To occupy the remaining space, the former choice was that of a single large animal, almost the size of the king's horse, depicted in bipedalism. Depicting the animal in quadrupedal position would have made the scene far less visually legible. This bipedal posture of tilting towards death is a form of iconographic topos for hunting dishes. From a formal point of view, this posture recalls the iconography of the animal master, a very ancient and common pattern for all ancient North Africa and West Asia, in which the mastered animal is often represented in bipedalism, with the animal's body forming two parallel lines framing the master's body. In Sasanian silver dish, this construction can therefore be explained by a form of iconographic continuation of the animal master, by adaptation to the material constraints of the support and the chosen scale, and by a precise narrative aiming at representing the animal in bipedalism, other than human, but very human.